yourself in a beautiful house with a beautiful wife. And you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? Letting the days go by. Let the water hold me down. Letting the days go by. Water flowing underground.
Welcome once again to Butch Maxwell's Complete Waste of Airtime right here on the Watchdog Network with Butch Maxwell, your host, along with Lola Miller. How you doing, Lola?
I'm doing well, Butch.
Good.
I'm doing well.
Good. Yeah. Did you survive the snowcopolis okay?
Let me tell you, I am so out of shape.
Oh, no.
I did. It took me like all morning, well, even more than that, to clean the car off and then do the stairs, of which we have like 150, and then the sidewalk.
Yeah.
That night, I got home from here, and I took a hot shower, Motrin, and just laid there in bed going, oh, no, I do hurt.
Yeah. That is. And it was a wet, heavy snow, too. So.
Well, initially, when I went out like at 9:30, it was still pretty fluffy. But, you know, when you got down to your vehicle itself, of course, there was a glaze of ice.
Ice, right.
So I had to use my butt to open the passenger door and finally get the truck started. And then, you know, that sort of melted. If you've seen my truck out there, I got mounds still on it. But in the afternoon then, when it started warming up just a little bit, yeah, it got heavy.
Okay, yeah,
got
it was.
heavy.
Yeah, and I waited until they were saying about somewhere during the noon hour on Monday it would stop snowing. So I waited until it seemed to stop and then went out. Boy, oh boy, it was heavy, and but got it all cleared off, and you know, it's beautiful. But oh my gosh, and the traffic still seems to be really challenged in a lot of areas too. It's slippery out there. Just be careful if you're out driving. Give yourself some extra time. I know I just sat in traffic for more than a half an hour on Interstate 70 eastbound.
Yes,
I don't know if there was
I
an
heard about
accident. Was there an accident out there or
Yeah.
something? Yeah.
Yep, they had all 3 lanes blocked
Yeah.
going up 2 Mile Hill for quite a while.
Yeah.
I think it was a semi,
Okay. Yeah.
and I heard something about a fire. you
Yeah.
know,
I know.
so-
Whatever it was holding up a lot of traffic for quite some time, and you just never know what you're going to run into out there. So be careful. So on today's agenda, I have a few things I want to talk about, and of course, as always, your calls are welcome. But have a little bit of news on Omicron. It has been found right here in Ohio County. Also want to share with you some information on how to get your free in-home COVID test. And I thought we'd spend a little time explaining what the proposed changes in federal voting laws would do. That is, if they would pass, which is unlikely. But at least let's talk about what it is that some of our lawmakers are trying to get into our federal legislation and why they may be doing that. And then I do have one kind of major thing I want to talk to you about, and that is why Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, along with the entire Republican Party, are serving a racist agenda while supporting the filibuster. You may think that the filibuster is some kind of a weird rule that the Senate has, and maybe it's to protect us and stuff like that. So let's look at today we will look at the real history of the filibuster, fact-based, all evidence, all highly researched. You can check my sources if you like. But my conclusion ultimately, and I think probably you're going to see the wisdom in this, if not agree with me at the end of this, is that actually the filibuster has been historically used for racist motives. And while I'm not outwardly calling Manchin, Sinema, or any Republican racist, in effect, though, what the support of the filibuster does support racism. So those are some of the things I'd like to talk about today, but we're not limited to that. We can certainly talk about anything that you like. Your calls are always welcome at 304-214-1600, and You can also text on that line too. So if you have anything to pipe in at any point during this hour, then please do. Another thing I didn't tease, but I did want to talk about is West Virginia is trying desperately to keep up with Florida and its draconian laws. The West Virginia lawmakers have introduced a bill to ban abortion after 15 weeks, which is a proposal that's nearly identical to the Mississippi law currently being reviewed by the United States Supreme Court. So as we wait for a decision to be made later in an abortion case that could overturn Roe v. Wade, at least two states, West Virginia and Florida, have introduced bills that are mirroring Mississippi's. Both of those bills would prohibit abortions after 15 weeks, except in a medical emergency or in the case of severe fetal abnormality. However, neither West Virginia nor Florida laws would provide exceptions for victims of rape or incest. The sponsor in West Virginia of this bill is Delegate Ruth Rowan, and she said on Tuesday that West Virginia has an obligation to protect the unborn as, quote, a Christian state where people can care about their families and their children. Okay, so she's declared that this is an all-Christian state. Yeah, it's mostly Christian, I suppose, but Christians have a diversity of opinions about these things. Now, Rowan herself has a child who has a disability, and she says a part of what has stimulated her on this quest of her own to be so vehemently anti-abortion in any case at all is because that she was advised by a medical professional that maybe she might want to terminate her own pregnancy. That did later lead to having a child who has a disability, and yet he's doing fine, at least according to her. So that's great. So we can sort of understand what her personal quest is all about, but of course, she is trying to inflict her version of morality on all the women of the state. The Kate Quinonez, who is the executive director for the Women's Health Center of West Virginia, the state's only facility performing abortion, said that this legislation is going to make it a lot harder for women to access abortions, which I guess is the point of the law. Current law in West Virginia prohibits abortions after 20 weeks, and it also requires women to undergo state-directed counseling and wait 24 hours before the procedure is provided. Also, if you're from, say, this area or the Eastern Panhandle or extreme southern West Virginia, the only place you can actually get an abortion legally right now is in Charleston. What this advocate, Kate Quinonez, says is that abortion bans by default are racist, are sexist, are rooted in white supremacy, particularly in the exploitation of black women and controlling women's bodies and decisions. She points out that these restrictions fall hardest on people who are already marginalized by our healthcare systems. So what she says is our legislators should be working to expand access to health care for marginalized folks, not take their health care away. So there you have it. How do you feel about this? What do you think? 15 weeks. It's not the most draconian law in the country, but it's pretty darn restrictive. If once this Supreme Court ruling comes down sometime later in this year, most likely in the spring, May, maybe June, and if Roe v. Wade is overturned, at least 26 states are expected to have abortion restrictions quickly go into effect or pass new ones. So that's a little disconcerting, I think. Again, I've never been in the market for an abortion for either me or a girlfriend or a wife or any of that stuff. So I have no particular stake in this, except that I don't want to see abortion being used as birth control. Definitely don't like that. I think abortion should be rare. But I think that's up to the woman, not to the man. I'm a guy, and I don't think I should have any particular say in it. It's really her say. Now, and maybe if I'm the father, for sure, I could tell her my opinion, but it's really up to her. I can't carry that child for her. So, and what I see, just anecdotally, when I see people out protesting against abortion rights, they're all men, all of them. I almost never see a woman out there doing that. Right now, the most of the national polls, and I know we all feel like, I don't really want to pay too much attention to polls, but for what it's worth, polls are suggesting that that there's a healthy majority, well over 60% of the people in this country, do not favor more restrictive abortion legislation. So what we've got here is a minority party, and that seems to be, the Republicans seem to be, pushing this almost exclusively, and really pushing the majority around. So I don't know. What do you think? You want to disagree with me? You want to agree? Pipe in? Whatever. Your thoughts are welcome. 304-214-1600. Meanwhile, let's move on. Omicron has been found in Ohio County. We've been wondering this for a while. Well, now the authority on this, Howard Gamble from the local health department, has said that they have spotted for sure at least 2 cases of the Omicron variant right here in the Wheeling area. Not particularly surprising given how things have been going, but yeah, it's in both cases, these people who tested positive for Omicron didn't do any traveling, or very little traveling at least, during the time when they would have gotten sick. So that indicates that, they were probably infected by somebody else around here who maybe hasn't been, maybe is asymptomatic, because that's one of the difficult things with this variant. New COVID cases in general have skyrocketed in Ohio County in recent weeks. From the last week in December, there were 212 new cases. The week following, so actually the week of December 26th through January 2nd, it went from 212 to 701. And then the following week, it went up to 861. So yes, we were very definitely on the rise here. Gamble notes that probably these post-Christmas increases are likely from holiday travels and gatherings. And he thinks that what we may be able to expect, let's stress that, not for sure, but is that we'll see a continued spike for some time and then a decline. We seem to be about 2 to 3 weeks behind the national trend. So he's expecting to actually see an increase for a little while and then a slow decrease.
Did you not know this was going to spike?
Oh, yeah.
Not in people being uber sick, but with all that push to get tested before you went away for Christmas, when the more you test, the more you're going to find.
Right.
And if anybody thought Omicron wasn't coming here, I don't know what world you're living in. I mean, it's everywhere. It's a variant that's not going to go away. And so many people that are testing positive for that are vaxxed and boosted. So, it's no different than it was 6 months ago. The problem is there's just been more testing.
Right.
And now with these at-home tests that are, you can get.
Right.
I figured there's going to be even higher numbers because people are going to test at home, and
The more you test, the more you'll find.
that's right.
Yeah.
Remember when this whole thing started way back in the olden days with that cruise ship out in California.
Yeah, the cruise ship that the president didn't want to allow the people off because he didn't want his numbers to go up.
He didn't want them necessarily tested.
Yeah.
Because that would have increased the numbers. Well,
Right.
in one hand, I I understand what he was talking about,
yeah.
you know? Because the more you test, the more you're going to find. And
But that's just, but willfully not testing is just embracing ignorance, which
well,
doesn't
that
help
could
us.
be, but I just don't. I am not overly alarmed by the numbers.
Right.
What alarms me are the hospitalizations and the deaths.
Mm-hmm.
That the fact that so many people are testing positive and they're staying away from people for 5 days, and their symptoms are either nothing or very mild. Gives me hope that this thing is going to abate to some degree.
Yeah,
Eventually.
I think so. I think it definitely will. And a question that may be in your mind, I've seen this posed kind of provocatively on social media a lot. Hey, if you get vaccinated and boosted and all that, and you still get the Omicron, what's the point? Well, the point is you're probably not going to go. You're not going to be very, very sick.
You're not going to die.
Yeah, you're not going to
That's
die.
the whole
And
point.
so that is the point. So there you go. You pseudo clever person. That is the point. There is a point. President Biden said the other day that we are going to be able to get at-home tests very readily, very soon. Of course, how soon we'll see.
That's a relative term.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's purposely vague, I think. And who's going to be on the hook for this? The United States Postal Service is. There's a new government website where people can order free COVID-19 at-home rapid antigen tests. It is already up and running. And you can get it at, here it is, covidtests.gov.
Plural.
Yeah, COVID tests, plural. That's why kind of that sibilant S there. covidtests.gov. And you can request up to 4 free tests to be delivered to your family. And I'm going to recommend doing this anyway, even if you've got no concerns at the moment, because if you should be infected or suspect you are infected, having that home test there is going to save you a lot, because you don't know how long it's going to take for these tests to come in. Right now, it's going to take longer than I hope it will eventually, but have them on hand, because when you need them, that's when you need them. And I know I had a relative who thought he was infected over the Christmas holiday. Well, he was exposed, and he had a really, really difficult time finding a test. While we expect this to get better, then you can go ahead and order it now, and it's free. It's free, and it's easy. Generally speaking, what you're going to want to do when you would need this is if you believe you might have been exposed, so you should probably test right away, and then actually save another test, so 24 hours later, even if you get a negative result the first time, wait 24 hours, test again, and then see. And then you can be pretty sure, if you've not been exposed in that 24-hour period, that you might be safe.
See, I was thinking, if somebody tells you, all right, I saw you yesterday, I have it, that's what I'm afraid of. So many people are going to use these tests initially, like that day, and it's going to be negative, and they're going to go, well, I'm cool.
Yeah.
I think the instructions should say, wait 24 hours, at least 24 hours, because like you said this one time a while ago. God, we've been talking about this
I know,
so
we
long.
have, yeah.
That just because you test negative right now does not mean that tonight you won't be, because you've been, exposed to somebody in the interim.
Yeah.
So, my advice, like I'm a doctor, wait a day, after you get the news, unless, of course, you're feeling sick.
Right.
That's a different story. But if you've been exposed to somebody, wait a day or so, and then test and see what it comes up.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
I'm afraid that so many of these tests are going to be, well, they're not wasted, but they're wasted because people test too soon and it comes back negative, and they don't follow up on it.
Right, yeah.
So that first test was kind of,
Yeah, kind of wasted.
Yeah,
So, even though it doesn't cost you anything, the tests are a little difficult to come by right now.
Yeah, everybody's going to be signing up for this. They're saying the post office is going to get slammed.
Yes, they are,
And,
yeah.
So you have to cut the postal workers some slack because I'm sure, not that the test weighs a lot, but they're going to be bulky,
Yes,
which means that these poor mail delivery people, particularly the ones in neighborhoods where they walk from house
Right.
to house to house,
yeah. It's going to be an extra burden for them.
well, I hope they all get a raise.
I did too. Those guys have been now. We have begun to pour some money, at least I understand, into the Postal Service since the new president took office. He doesn't hate the mail system the way the former president apparently did. But keep in mind that even with President Biden's promise that we're going to have all of these new tests ready for you to order. Probably it's going to be late January before we actually begin to see any of those. So, and of course, antigen tests are the best, but right now there's no home antigen test that's widely available. So, this will be a pretty good test, but it's going to be a little bit before it comes available. All right. Well, we have successfully wasted our first half hour, and when we come back, I've got really kind of one issue, but it's kind of big. I want to talk about some legislation that's going on. Explain to you, and just in case you don't, it's tough to get the whole range of things. So I want to try to do my best at explaining this legislation that is probably not going to pass, that the Democrats are opposing for voting rights. So I want to explain the need for it, what the two bills are, why they're likely to go down, and in context of that, the fact is the filibuster is what's going to kill it, and so why is the filibuster such a horrible thing? And I will explain the racist background of the filibuster, which is something you probably didn't learn in high school. I didn't, but I've done the research on it now. So there you go. So you're listening to Butch Maxwell's Complete Waste of Airtime right here on the Watchdog for Wednesday, January 19th, my mom's birthday. And I'm right here with Lola Miller, and we'll be right back after these words.
The Bears outclaw the Mountaineers. Hi, everybody. I'm Tony Caridi. That story coming up on today's Mountaineer Report, brought to us by Kroger.
At Kroger, fresh groceries are our thing, so we do freshness checks on the items in your delivery order at every step of their journey from our farms to our stores. And pick and pack every blue, raz, and strawberry in your free pickup order with the utmost care. Because we believe in treating your food the same way we'd want ours to be treated. It's the golden rule, only for fresh fruit and stuff. Order now using the mobile app. We're fresh every day, so shop anyway. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Free pickup on orders of $35 or more. Restrictions may apply. 42 million Americans struggle with hunger, yet 35% of the food in this country is wasted. Those aren't just numbers. They're our neighbors, your daughter's friend from school, the family of 4 next door. The Kroger Company Zero Hunger, Zero Waste Foundation is committed to making fresh food accessible to all by ensuring it never goes to waste. Together, we can help end hunger. Learn more at zerohunger.zerowastefoundation.org.
You can call it the one that got away from the Mountaineer basketball team. West Virginia suffering its first home loss of the season last night, a 77-68 final to the 5th-rated Baylor Bears. Yes, Baylor was favored going into the game. However, Baylor did not have 2 of its main contributors in the lineup, so it would have been a signature win for WVU. Now, the Mountaineers battled. They were down by 4 points at halftime, but West Virginia's inability to make shots from right in front of the rim all evening long eventually cost them this game. Consider this: West Virginia ended the contest 7 of 22 on layups. That's 31%. On the other side, Baylor hit 9 of 16 on layups. That's 56%. The bench with huge production for the Bears, outscoring the Mountaineers 28-18. West Virginia's front line scoring was almost non-existent. Consider the fact that the big scoring for West Virginia, over 60% of the Mountaineer points, came from the trio of Taz Sherman, Malik Curry, and Sean McNeil. Curry again showing a very efficient day. He had 19 points following up his big performance against Kansas back on Saturday. You add it all up, West Virginia just did not shoot the ball well enough at 39% from the field. Baylor comes in and they finish up at 47% from the floor. Things certainly don't get easier for the Mountaineers. They'll leave on Friday for Lubbock, Texas, and they'll take on one of the surprise teams in the conference on Saturday afternoon, the Red Raiders of Texas Tech. Final score once again, Baylor 77, West Virginia 68. That is today's Mountaineer Report, brought to us by Kroger, the official grocer of WVU Athletics. I'm Tony Caridi on the Mountaineer Sports Network from Learfield.
AutomotiveMap.com presents the Sports Flash, powered by The Score on the Watchdog. I'm John Thayer. The NHL plans to stop testing asymptomatic players and staff members for COVID-19 following the All-Star break. The NHL and NHLPA have reached an agreement, though the sides will meet again later this month to assess the climate and formalize. The NHL will still test all players and staffers before cross-border travel between the United States and Canada. Players who show symptoms will be required to test. The PGA Tour is in California this weekend for the American Express. The event gets underway tomorrow at La Quinta Country Club in La Quinta, California. It is scheduled to run through Sunday. The defending champion is Siwoo Kim. Download the Score app today. Lightning fast sports alerts so you never miss a thing. I'm John Thayer with the Sports Flash, powered by The Score on the Watchdog.
You could save big when you bundle your home and auto with Progressive, but when we just come out and say it, it feels like it falls a bit flat. So we're going to use humor. But we don't want to insult your intelligence, so nothing too goofy. And we need to avoid any polarizing topics. Oh, and it has to be about how you can save big when you bundle your home and auto with Progressive. You know what? Maybe humor is a bad idea. Yeah, it's never going to work. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Discount not available in all states or situations.
Exergen would like you to know about an important new study by the FDA. It confirms what the medical community has always known. Non-contact thermometers are not accurate, and they fail to meet FDA requirements for accuracy in labeling. With new strains of COVID on the rise, we can't afford to tolerate rampant false temperature readings from non-contact thermometers. Accurate temperature measurements are essential. You need Exergen thermometers because they are accurate and backed by over 100 clinical studies. Be sure. Be accurate with Exergen. Learn more at Exergen.com.
Babies come with lots of decisions.
Cloth or disposable? Crib or bassinet?
So when it comes to protection, go with the safest, most effective choice, vaccination. Get all the recommended vaccines for your baby by age 2 to protect your child against 14 serious childhood diseases. For more reasons to vaccinate, talk to your child's doctor. Go to cdc.gov/vaccines or call 800-CDC-INFO. A message from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Introducing our new redesigned 7 News app. Our new app features a sleek, modern design, an easy-to-navigate home screen with quick access to local news content and a localized weather forecast. Subscribing to notifications is easier, and with one tap, you have access to recent push notifications. There are more ways to watch and find video. To get the new WTRF 7 News app, just update the latest version or download the WTRF 7 News app in your Apple or Google Play Store by searching WTRF.
For all of your IT needs, visit OmniPerforms.com. Omni Strategic Technologies, the only IT company that the Watchdog trusts.
On the last talk line on Metro News, Tony Caridi, play-by-play announcer for the Mountaineers, his take after West Virginia's loss to Minnesota in the bowl game.
You know, going forward, that to me is the one lingering thought that I have at this moment, is that as we get ready to turn the corner and start in for next year, to get back to where we want it to be, this offense has got to become dynamic.
Keep up with what's happening in West Virginia Talk Line, weekdays at 10:06, right here on this Metro News radio station. Talk to you then.
And as life goes on for us here at the Watchdog Network, we're continuing Butch Maxwell's Complete Waste of Airtime for Wednesday, January 19th, 2022. And if you're wondering what the new, what's all this brouhaha about, yes, I just can't.
I was somewhere else. And it just
All of a sudden, yes, all this brouhaha is about the federal election laws. What's going on? Why are we talking about this? What's everybody all riled up about? Well, let's see. Right now in Texas, it's a crime for anybody working for the elections to send out an absentee ballot to voters who don't ask for them specifically. In Georgia, most voters who show up at the wrong polling place on election day will be turned away instead of being permitted to cast provisional ballots as they have in the past. And in Florida, a new law makes it harder for voters to continue receiving ballots by mail and limits availability of drop boxes. In some other states, state legislatures are putting forth bills that would allow basically the governor or the Secretary of State to overturn the democratically appointed elected official if they don't like the outcome. There are a number of different laws that are being put forth by Republican-controlled legislatures throughout the country, and they all seem to be determined to try to make sure that that Republicans will win any future elections, and this seems to me to be a very, very anti-democratic strategy here. Sure, we've got, on top of that, we've got changing districting, sort of redistricting, so that a process called gerrymandering, which is also in the control of whichever party has control of a state legislature. And right now, Republicans have more state legislatures by far than Democrats do. So what Democrats have been trying to do is to circumvent all of these rules, these laws at the state level by passing some standards for elections, so that nationally we've got some basic standards. But this law cannot get passed, even though it's passed in one house of the Congress, in the House of Representatives. It's not yet passed in the state, and is unlikely to, because there is the Senate is split 50-50, exactly, Republicans and Democrats, or people who caucus with those parties, with the one tie-breaking vote being the vice president. So Democrats do have a simple majority, but they have to overcome a 60% majority. They have to get that much. They have to get at least 60% in order to get legislation passed like this new, like these two voting rights bills that are up right now for consideration. The two bills are the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and then the Freedom to Vote Act. The John Lewis bill, which was named for the late Georgia congressman, focuses on restoring the power of the federal government to oversee state voting procedures to prevent discrimination against minority voters. There were two different Supreme Court rulings that have eroded key portions of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, and this proposal would actually update that law. Now, the Freedom to Vote Act is a more sweeping measure that would affect how Americans register to vote and how they cast their votes. It would make Election Day a federal holiday. It would mandate that states require voter identification to accept a broader range of IDs. A state can still require some sort of voter ID, but it allows for, even if a potential voter gets a sworn statement by another adult who attests to the voter's identity, then that should be good enough, at least for a provisional ballot. It would allow voters to use ballot drop boxes. This method of voting was popularized a lot in the 2020 cycle because of COVID restrictions, et cetera. A number of states have either eliminated or severely restricted voter ballot drop boxes. It would establish nationwide vote-by-mail rules so that you don't need an excuse, such as illness or travel, to vote by mail. And once you opt to vote by mail, you're going to continue to get sent that ballot every time. You don't have to ask all the time the way it is now. Also, it would allow people to register and cast ballots at the same time. 20 states and Washington, D.C. already do this. So this would mandate that states would allow voters to do that. It would also permit voter registration forms to also serve as absentee ballot applications. Again, it's kind of streamlining the paperwork. Aren't we all kind of in favor of that? It would require states to count provisional ballots as long as they are cast in the correct counties. So that's not always the case either. And it would allow third-party groups to give water and food to voters waiting in line to cast ballots, as long as they aren't engaging in electioneering or otherwise trying to stray votes. And it would restore federal voting rights to felons once they're released from prison. State laws can vary widely about this. So this would make it uniform across the nation. If you were convicted of a felony, you served your time, guess what? You're back to being a citizen again. So these are the sorts of rules and laws that a lot of Democrats are trying to get the Senate to agree to, but it's being stalled by one thing: the filibuster. Now, so what is the filibuster? Well, it's a rule in the Senate that allows for any senator to really stall legislation by standing up and talking. And talking, and talking, and talking, and talking. Now, this rule from the Senate, it dates back really to the turn of the 19th century. But so it hasn't been in as a part of the Senate for the entire history, but it does have a long history. So we've got to make that specify that. But right now, what we've got, the reality is there's nothing that can be done because of this law. And these two Democratic senators are saying that they are not they're not really prepared to get rid of the filibuster entirely, or at least even carve out. And what they're being asked for right now is just carve out this one exception to the rule so that we can get voting rights passed. But there, we still have this 60 vote threshold for any major legislation. And most recently, this debate is actually centered on racism in the filibuster's history. Former President Barack Obama and Senator Elizabeth Warren have argued that the filibuster has been a tool used by racists to protect white supremacy. In a floor speech just 2 days ago, or just a day ago, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell denied this entirely. He accused Democrats of lying about history for political purposes. These talking points are an effort to use the terrible history of racism to justify a partisan power grab in the present, said McConnell. Now, of course, some of this argument is purely partisan, crap, the normal stuff. A proxy for a debate over what the filibuster will do today. But there's an actual historical dispute here. And if you take a look at the actual record, it suggests that Democrats are a little more right than Republicans, or actually far closer than Republicans on this particular issue. You start to see civil rights bills pass the House in the 1920s. And the filibuster rule, which was actually, the modern version was created in 1917. Okay, so hardly ancient history. It's over 100 years old, yes, but it's not like from the beginning. So, and soon after that, in the 1920s, you began to see civil rights bills being blocked by the filibuster. If there was any ambiguity during the antebellum era, it certainly was shed during the Jim Crow era, the era I'm talking about, where it was widely taken for granted that the filibuster was directly tied to blocking civil rights. And this history really matters. One of the most fundamental justifications for the filibuster offered by McConnell and conservative thinkers is that the practice protects minority rights, preventing the Senate majority from running roughshod over its political opponents. Well, that seems like a good idea, but the reality of it is quite different. Let's go back and look at some other historical incidents. Way back in 1805, yes, well before 1917, when the modern filibuster came into existence, Vice President Aaron Burr laid out a series of proposals for streamlining congressional rules. And one suggestion was that both chambers remove something called the previous question motion, which allowed a simple majority to end debate on a topic and force a vote. The Senate took Burr's advice, but the House didn't. So at the time, neither Burr nor anyone else thought that scrapping the previous question rule would create a 60-vote threshold for passing legislation through the Senate. In fact, that's something the Constitution's framework is actually rejected. In fact, the case for getting rid of the previous question rule was that it was more or less redundant. It was simply a housekeeping measure. The Senate was using the motion infrequently, and other motions available to do the same thing. So, at this point in history, it's not obvious that the filibuster is especially racist by the standards of the time, although there's no doubt that pro-slavery senators like John C. Calhoun of South Carolina certainly employed the filibuster to protect Southern interests. And even some experts argue that Calhoun should actually be credited with the invention of the filibuster, but that's still kind of a matter of debate. But what's not especially controversial among scholars is that the modern filibuster is inextricably bound up with Jim Crow. It's been a tool used overwhelmingly by racists, says Kevin Cruz, who's an historian of race and American politics at Princeton University. In 1917, the Senate finally decided to reform the filibuster, adding a provision that would allow 2/3 of senators to vote on a cloture of the motion that would end debate, interrupting any individual senator who just wouldn't shut up. So this provision is called Rule 22, and it was designed to make filibustering harder, but it had the opposite effect. It was now possible for a minority of senators to block bills by voting down cloture motions. So this is how the filibuster works today, though it's with a 3/5 threshold for cloture rather than the original 2/3, thanks to a 1975 reform. Now, the defenders of Jim Crow pioneered this new filibuster, successfully deploying it again and again to block civil rights bills. Richard Russell, who's a leading filibuster practitioner and a staunch segregationist, said in 1949 that nobody mentions any other legislation in connection with civil rights legislation. Two political scientists, Sarah Bender and Stephen Smith, identified every bill between 1917 and 1994 that they believe failed purely because of the filibuster. And among these, at least half were civil rights bills, including the anti-lynching bills that were proposed in 1922 and 1935. They also found that senators' views on filibuster reforms was tightly linked to their own views on civil rights. Pro-reform senators tend to support civil rights bills, while anti-reform legislators oppose them. So while the early republic's talking filibuster may have not had racist origins, the modern filibuster, the one that allows Mitch McConnell to impose a 60-vote requirement on anything Biden and the Democrats propose, that clearly does. So why does this matter? Well, it's a fair question. The mere fact that the filibuster, as we know it, is a Jim Crow relic, as Obama once put it, doesn't necessarily say anything about whether it's desirable to keep around or not. I mean, if you can sort of get past all the bad connotations of Jim Crow. But to understand why the history of filibusters matters, take a closer look at the arguments in favor of keeping the 60-vote threshold. Of these, the most prominent by far is that the filibuster is necessary to protect minority rights. The National Review made this point clearly in a recent essay when it said, and I'll quote this, what the enemies of the filibuster are arguing is that the American political system should contain fewer protections for minorities against popular majorities. If you were designing a political system from scratch, knowing that it would contain unpopular minority groups that require protection from oppression, wouldn't you want more protections against majority power? So yeah, that is their argument against getting rid of the filibuster. All right, I'm going to take an interruption, though, because I've got a call, and I always like to hear from my callers. Yeah, who do we have here?
It's Wade.
Hey, how you doing, Wade?
Fine. Hey, have you talked about our Senator Byrd yet?
No, I haven't really gotten into Senator Byrd yet, but he was a big user of the filibuster and pretty commonly thought to be a racist himself.
Back in the 60s, when the civil rights legislation first was proposed, he talked on the Senate floor for 14 hours
Yeah,
to keep the law from passing.
yeah, yeah.
But before he died, he apologized, and he said that was one of the darkest moments in his life, and he apologized for doing it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, and we all like to see, somebody who comes around and, a tale of redemption. And
Yeah, better late than never.
Better late
I'll
than
hang up and listen to your show. You're doing a good job.
Well, thank you so much, Wade. I appreciate it. Yeah, so my big point here is that this is crap saying that this is all about democracy. When political theorists talk about minority right protections, the general purpose of these legal arguments is to protect against human rights abuses and guarantee equal access to the political system. So free speech protection, like the First Amendment and equal protection guarantee of the 14th Amendment, those are both designed to create legal protections that directly vindicate the rights of democratic minorities with limited political power, not protecting a Senate body to stop legislation. Got another call. Who do we have this time?
It's Dan.
Dan. Hey, Dan, how are you?
I'd like to ask you a question.
Oh.
How in the world could you have any political love for a man that's a racist, Joe Biden? Isn't that what Kamala Harris said he was, a racist? That he wouldn't let her get on a school bus with the white children?
Yeah.
When they were debating each other. Oh, so all of a sudden he's the greatest thing next to Willy Wonka because he's the president and she's the vice president.
Dan, did I say that?
Huh?
Did I say that he was the greatest president next to
No, but you play him up. But the reason I'm calling is I'm kind of perplexed.
Okay.
Because I like Chick-fil-A, okay?
Uh-huh.
And I think my family is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a congressional race going where one guy said the other guy took $1,600 and bought Chick-fil-A, okay?
Uh-huh.
And then he took $6,100 and he took his family on a vacation, okay?
Okay.
Well, I think I'll vote for that guy because I love my family and I like Chick-fil-A.
Okay.
Now the other, well, that's my insanity, okay?
That's fine.
But the other guy, he's a rhinoceros and he lives in a swamp. Why would you want to vote for a rhinoceros that lives in a swamp? You would vote for the guy that likes Chick-fil-A because Chick-fil-A is a good Christian organization. They're closed on Sundays. You know what I mean?
I know what you're saying, Dan. I don't agree with you, but I know what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah. So let's everybody vote for the Chick-fil-A guy because everybody likes Chick-fil-A. So I'm just going to leave it with that one.
Okay.
Because this whole political thing is just insane.
Okay. All right, Dan.
You have to have a PhD in misery to understand it.
Okay.
Have a good day.
All right. Thanks, Dan. I appreciate your input. What Dan was talking about was during the debates, the Democratic debates, now President Biden, then candidate Biden, talked about his support of legislation that was anti-busing at the time. That was a big deal in the early 90s, anti-busing. And Kamala Harris was hurt by that because she had to ride a bus, and it took, not just a bus to school. Lots of kids take a bus to school, but she was bused a very, very long distance, as were a lot of black children during that era. And so that was, now I don't think that means that Joe Biden is a racist. I think that actually, if you talk to a lot of people of color, he generally has pretty good support, and I don't think anybody, his vice president is a black woman too. So I don't think you could really, it's really quite fair to call him a racist. But, All right. Well, I hope today that I've done a little more than totally waste your time. That maybe I've given you some fodder to think about for the filibuster and other things, and maybe the coronavirus. If nothing else, maybe just entertain you a little bit. So we'll count that as a success. I'm Butch Maxwell. Thanks for wasting a perfectly good hour with me this week, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye, Lola. See you then.